What's up, Neki?
Hey, Carl.
It's Monday, but
Mm-hmm.
every other Monday we always have a great Monday. Every day is great, but every other Monday we have KOVIKI talk and we get to talk to however crazy or wonky the Monday goes. We end up on the show with amazing people doing amazing things. Today's no different. So,
Mm-hmm.
real quickly, this is KOVIKI Talk. It is a Pacific Islander based show that's all about COVID 19, but it's from the PI perspective. So, we always talk about being timely when it was time to vote, when it was time to do the census. How do we do that safely? And right now, it's all about Tonga, right? We're all as a Pacific Islander community, we are trying to get support and relief to Tonga, which we've done before, but like so many different things, we haven't done in the middle of a pandemic. So, how do we do these things? What are extra things that are needed? And who are the people on the ground? How do we get them support? That's what the show is about today. So proud to be on the air with two amazing people. Naki, do you want to go ahead and introduce our first guest?
Yeah, our first guest is going to represent herself, of course, on Tonga Consul General, Bay Area, Sela Tukia. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know we usually read your bio, but we've decided to let you introduce yourself this evening. Sela, thank you.
Thank you, Neki and Carl. It's always great to be on the show with you. Although it's my first time to do the KOVIKI talk, so I'm at the Tonga Consulate General here in the Bay Area. I'm the Tongan consul, and we do a lot of great stuff. But basically, we interact with local government agencies, state agencies, and also at the federal level. Not to mention dealing with a lot of NGOs, different stakeholders. Talking about issues of mutual interest that are of benefit to the Tongan diaspora here in the United States, and also looking back towards the kingdom. So we're really happy to be on the show today. And what's in the forefront, I think, of a lot of the news recently has been the volcano eruption that took place on the 15th of January in 2022. And it's a date that I think will go down in the history of many Tongans' minds and everyone else because of the magnitude of the natural disaster and the effect that it's had on her people. And I think it's also in line in the bigger picture with this current concern about climate change and its effects that it has, on the world and in particular our smaller island states. So I'm happy to see that we have Alicia Tsulua here to join in the conversation this evening. She is also very active on many NGO fronts, so it'd be interesting to hear from her. But I think we also do, trade and tourist promotion from the consulate. And of course, we try to take care of all the immigration passport needs of our people here in the United States and far beyond, and also try to draw travelers who might want to visit, which unfortunately is not happening during COVID times because of international border restrictions. But I'll take a breath there and hand back to you.
Thank you, Sela. And next we have Alicia Tsulua, who is coming from down Southern California, kind of, sort of. Monterey is kind of Southern for me, but Alicia, welcome to the show. Can we have you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. First and foremost, I must follow protocol having Sela on the call. De Fatuloa tu Consela, Malo e la Malia Fetuuna. Fra malo at kia Carl Monaki he tukwhanga maari at ke popot ke ngawe o whapea ha whaha aonga ai whamatala tuku atu. I just want to pay my respects to our Honorable Sela Tukia, our Consul General, and somebody that we hold in very high regard in our Tongan community as the official link between the diaspora here in the U.S. and Tonga. And I know that you asked for her bio, and she didn't quite give you that, but I just want to say how much respect that we hold for her work and the work that they do at the Consulate General's office, and thank her for continuing to connect us here in diaspora to Tonga. I'm currently the project director with the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Data Policy Lab, which is at the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research. Thankfully, they give me a paycheck every couple of weeks to be able to do a lot of other things in community. I'm the data lead for the Southern California Pacific Islander COVID-19 response team. I'm honored to be serving alongside a lot of great community leaders and learning from so many of our communities in Southern California. However, I live in Central Coast, California, which means that I become kind of a link with our communities in Northern California. Lots of folks that I have grown alongside and look up to in our Bay Area. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. Thank you, Alisi.
Thank you. And it's funny being in the Central Coast, you get disowned from both ends. Southern California says that's Northern California, and Northern California says that's Southern California. But either way, we're happy to have you. We're happy to share space. It's actually our second day in a row with Sela. And it's a lot of our focus of PBD's focus of how do we get the most support to Tonga as quickly as possible. And we're really going to dive into that, into the things that both of you powerful ladies are involved in. And, you know, how can we get involved right now? And because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are just wondering, like, what is, because a lot of times there are disreputable organizations that just kind of scavenge on disasters, and you see people come in and they're not, the money's not getting there, right? So I think that a lot of people are hesitant, and seeing people on here that are respected members of the community really gives people a sense of, okay, I can get involved with the organizations they're representing because of the credibility that you both carry. So thank you so much for joining us. I know Naki has an icebreaker for us real quick before we get into that. We have an e-community health worker on staff at PBD. So if you have a question that you need, if you need services, if you need resources, you can put them into the chat, and they will reach out to you either through email or directly in the chat, however you want to receive the information. But feel free to ask questions that are COVID related, health related, anything that questions that you have. Our e-community health worker can respond to that. So Naki, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Carl. So just real quick, just a quick icebreaker. We wanted to ask you guys, if you could rename yourself, what name would you pick for yourself? And we'll start with Alisi. We'll start with Alisi.
Wow, that's a good question. I'm grateful for the name I was given. However, I sometimes complain that I didn't get a longer Tongan name.
Yeah.
Because Alisi is actually after my grandma, but a lot of my family use my middle name, which is the Tongan translation of Deborah. So I wish my name was more interesting. So if I were to rename myself, aside from taking all the name of the women ancestors that I have, I think most recently I've been really hanging on to this concept of Koloaka no Kato, like all of my treasures. I saw somebody that was named that, and I was like, wow, I would have loved to have that really long, meaningful name. So yeah, I would go with Koloaka no Kato.
That's beautiful.
That is
beautiful. And we'll go to Sela. How about you?
That's a very interesting question for a talk show on a Monday afternoon, but thank you for the opportunity. I'll leave the deep and meaningful for Alisi, and thank you, Alisi, for just saying a few words in our native tongue. I think that's most appropriate. So I have my first name and two middle names, and then I had a really long maiden name once upon a time. So as soon as I got married, I quickly changed my name to my married name for brevity, and I had all sorts of real bad tongue twister versions. But I'm also named after my paternal grandmother, but my middle name, interestingly enough, I think I was named after a ship line, a cruise ship. Back in the 70s, without being dead giveaway for age there, Carl. I see a little grin there. So my middle name is actually Anastasia, or Anastasia, if you want to get more exotic. So I'd probably, as opposed to choosing another name, I would use Anastasia or Anastasia, just for being exotic. I would probably use that as a known name now, if you was given the opportunity.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Carl?
That's tough. I'm the fifth oldest male named with the name Carl in my family. So I don't know that I would change it by choice. But if I had to, or if I could, same thing. I would pick some long Polynesian meaningful name. I'd probably go talk to an elder and find out, what a really long name would be, and pick the longest, hardest. There's a lady in Hawaii that her name didn't fit on the license because her Hawaiian name was so long, and she had to petition the state to lengthen the letters that go on the license. So I'd probably find a name where the state of California would have to lengthen the amount of letters that could go on the license. How about you, Naki?
Awesome. I would pick my grandmother's name. My mom name, so my government name is Annette. And my mom back in the day used to watch the Mickey Mouse Club. And there was an Annette Funicello on the Mickey Mouse Club that she loved. And I was like, really, Mom? You couldn't give me the Samoan name or name me after one of my grandmothers? So I would want to be named Marcella, which is my middle name, and it's my maternal my grandmother's name. So, and she was, of course, like all of the women in our community and the elder women that have fought to get here to, take care of our families. It's so hard back in the day, right? You had to go to get your own food. You had to, my grandmother took the canoe to different islands to help. So, it's just the strength in all the women of the Pacific. I would choose that name. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So of course, we wanted to, bring you both on to talk about all the work that you do and that you are currently doing, and the work that has been added onto you because of the tsunami that happened in Tonga. And we know that there's tons and tons of fundraisers, and we know, Sela, that there's a fundraiser this weekend. But we're going to start with you, Sela. Tell us what from when this happened, have you been overwhelmed with people getting a hold of you, trying to get any information from Tonga?
Thank you. And I thank you, Neki. I see Alisi smiling there. Hopefully my response to her and her group, her LA-based group, was timely. But I think we had this conversation yesterday, and of course we can always add on to it, but it's just been really touching, the response that we've received here in the United States and globally to what has taken place in Tonga. And I think we mentioned yesterday, yeah, we try to understand, what makes this volcano eruption different. And I think what we decided yesterday was that the fact that we have two natural disasters, so to speak, superimposed on each other. So while we're still trying to deal with COVID and the pandemic, I'm sad to say I have just been informed this afternoon that the community transmission positive cases that have been identified in Tonga as of this afternoon has gone up. I'm not sure whether it was 11 or whether it's 14. And so we had that we were dealing with, not just Tonga, true to say, but also still the rest of the world. And then superimposed, of course, on that is this volcano eruption. I think the main two effects from that were this thick ash that fell, and which obviously covered most of the country, and obviously affected the air quality and so forth, covered all the buildings and the land and everything. We could see that. And then, of course, secondly, the tsunami waves, which unfortunately rose up on parts of the Hapai island group and Eua, and also the main island group Tongatapu on the coastal areas, and really devastating, almost demolishing, settlements and even island dwellings there, which was really hard for the eye to see. So, it's left, we haven't had a number, but a large group of persons who are now displaced. They don't have homes, and some of those from the outer islands have been brought to the main island, Tongatapu, and they've found temporary dwellings for them in church halls, in village halls, and they're trying to deal with them, in terms of offering them regular supplies, food security, water security, clothing, blankets to keep them warm, and then we did mention yesterday it's important to register, the psychological, the mental element where these people have been affected, where they vividly saw the tsunami waves come onto their island shores and demolish their dwellings. So that's really hard at the moment, and we have had an outpouring of support. I'm sorry, I think I used the word overwhelming. I think that kind of has a slight negative connotation. So I've taken a mental note not to say overwhelming, because you can clarify by saying it in a positive note. So I'll say an outpouring of wonderful support, just prayers, love emails, and people wanting to, help in any way they can. We have lent our name, the consulate name, as I think Alisi did allude to. We do officialize, efforts. So by doing that, we have joined and lent our name to a number of community initiatives. And in addition to that, because of the communication disconnect, it's quite usual for governments to offer a relief fund account. But in the absence of that, and we managed to get some approval by telephone from our leaders in Tonga, we have offered the Consulate General bank account here in the Bay Area, because it's a US bank account number, to those who might wish to make a monetary donation, in which we will transfer to Tonga to the main relief account in due course. But I like to think of myself as the coordinator, as opposed to being the main instigator where I'm doing the mega tsunami volcano drive. I like to just be behind the scenes, seamlessly trying to join people, make connections, steer them in the right direction, or in the direction they wish to give their pennies and their donations to, just to make that transition and ensure that people get their donation, their love, their offer, it all the way to Tonga. And we had a valid comment there yesterday from Carl, which I totally agree with. At times, people might be more willing to lend their hand or their assistance perhaps to the NGOs, because they have their grassroots level, they're reaching out to the community, and that's what you prefer to support. So as opposed to saying there's a right and a wrong way, I think it's more, what is the best way for you, and with what you want to offer and to give to these people who are really in great need at this time.
It's really been interesting to see how quickly the government of Tonga has moved to action. And sometimes that's the kind of thing that I was talking about yesterday, is the U.S. government is so huge that to get things to move quickly is really hard to do. Like once things get going and support gets going, then things move. But to see how quickly the government of Tonga has moved has been inspiring to see, because they're actually, they're moving quickly to support the people and work with community-based organizations as well. So much to unpack here, like global warming, there's the pandemic, and then there's people in need. Has there been a thought with either of you or the organizations that are moving, this is for that and this is for that, like compartmentalizing relief efforts, or is it just get the relief to the people and to the shores and let the people on the ground sort that kind of thing out?
Alisi,
yeah.
No, go ahead, Sela.
Yeah. Sorry, Alice, we'll give you a chance. It's just perhaps I have the information for that question. So as I say, it's just trying to steer people in the direction that's best for them. So for Tonga, we have the governmental agency, which is called the National Emergency Management Office. And usually relief goods are sent to them, and then they distribute it as they see fit. And, I think it's universal to say that governments come with a bureaucracy which often take time for things to trickle through. So at the same time, they often use the Tonga Red Cross and also His Majesty's Armed Forces to implement the distribution to those who are particularly affected and really need it immediately. But at the same time, there are a number of other organizations who you can reach out to, and one of them is called MORDI, M for McDonald's, ORDI, and I believe they have a website. They're very reputable and have a very good working ethic and association with a number of overseas organizations, and they have a particular ethos that they like to concentrate on. And I know we've had a Zoom meeting with their Auckland-based team in New Zealand. They've been given the realm to talk with donors overseas. So they're really focusing, they've decided to leave the immediate relief to government. And we can see quite vividly in the news that New Zealand, Australia, and other big countries and agencies are sending their relief to Tonga for the immediate. But MODI, for example, has decided to focus more on the housing in the medium to longer term. And so they've got a project proposal which they're trying to finalize together with their initial assessment report. That's always really important, isn't it? Because we need to know exactly what is needed, and that will be based on information and data, which Alisi works with and deals with. That's how it works, doesn't it?
Right. Everything. It all comes down to data, like how many people, what location, and Alisi lost power. So we're going to see if we can get her back on. Mena's working with her to try to get her back on. So a lot of the information that you give, like I've been calling it NEMO, National Emergency. Yes. I've been calling it NEMO, and I've seen that everywhere where the packages that have been labeled, or I say in NEMO, but Sela, you mentioned some COVID cases that are now rising. Where are those stemmed from? Like, go ahead. I'll let you.
So the first two community transmitted cases were identified from essential workers at the wharf. So the main wharf where they receive, not only disaster relief goods, but the usual commercial goods that are sent to Tonga. So they did a random test there of a number of people, I think a week ago, and that's where they detected the first two cases. And then, of course, they did the contact tracing and found that members, I believe, of the families of these two initially identified persons started. Now, the enlarging of this group now that has been identified as positive cases now has been discovered inland. And so I haven't received any further information about where these clusters, very small though at this stage, have sort of developed from. So, but it's quite crucial now. We can see, although Tonga hasn't been really enforcing the testing or implementing the testing because there hasn't really been a need, in the absence of positive community transmitted COVID cases, it is now essential that they start undertaking the steps that we have already seen has taken place much earlier in the piece here in the United States. Yeah. But of course, that is a luxury, if I can say it's a luxury, that it is for a country such as Tonga, who is now only 2 years into the pandemic, had their first community transmitted cases.
Right. And is it delaying them from getting their supplies? Like I'll let you answer.
Yes, no, that's very true, Nikki. It's a good lead question. You probably might want to add to that for clarification. The the way in which Tonga has accepted all this wonderful relief assistance from overseas so far has been drop and go. This was just to try and still maintain the COVID-less country, and so that is still very much the mode of operations going forward. But it's difficult. We have like a moving border, don't we?
Yeah.
Borderline. We had we were looking at airports and wharfs as the main ports of entry to guard, but now it has come in country. So yeah, that has added on, I would say, a third layer, to, because now testing will be a crucial element of their operations now going forward. But yes, it's drop and go. It's very much drop and go. And in fact, there was an operation that was about to take place of an airplane that was about to go out from one country, and but unfortunately, they still have to meet the vaccination requirements. And as you both know, and I do, internationally now you pretty much have to show that you've been vaccinated, don't you think? I don't think it's very rare occurrence now that you can get on any plane to go anywhere without being vaccinated. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I
Right.
think
Yeah.
the travel restrictions, especially to an island, where, and we've talked about this a lot, of if the hospitals get overwhelmed in, I don't know, Arizona, you've got New Mexico and California, and you've got other states near, that you can reach out for those resources. If you're on an island, it's much more difficult to avoid having your resources overwhelmed. So being being strict um, and going this long without having cases is a testament to the willpower and the staying power of a people that are keep their eye on what's important. Do you think there's a that there's a bigger issue? Definitely is a bigger issue, but in Tonga, I don't think that some people understand, like, the water. Why is water more important in a disaster situation, in an emergency situation in Tonga or an island, where sometimes wells aren't where they get their water, or main centralized water systems aren't where they get their water. Can you talk a little bit about the catchments and why water is such an issue? Because, like, Mackey's down at SF. Enterprise, getting trucks loaded and asking for water, and water is obviously important, but why is it extra important in this situation with Tonga?
Thank you. So, the main water supply that feeds the on Tongatapu, which is the main island, and the capital, of course, is Nuku'alofa, and it feeds the wider, I would say, the wider Nuku'alofa district. The water supply, the water catchment is below, is underground, obviously, and so. But a lot of households, it's very common for households and dwellings, and it's usually a common occurrence for community projects, is to have your own water tank in your home. You grow up knowing that you're going to, because the rainwater is just delicious. And so good to say that there is perhaps less pollution out there in the island, still very natural. So this water is usually caught and goes down into your water tank, and that feeds into your water supply at home. So this has been the concern since the volcanic eruption, where the people were able to close off their water tanks in time. So that is the first concern, to prevent the ash, which of course has sulfur in it. The kind of fumes that are released from it. So there's, it affects the air quality. So that was the first concern. And the second concern is that the water authorities really must check, this water catchment area that feeds the main water supply in the urban areas. And I believe that has been established, that it is okay. It is suitable for use, but I think people are sparingly trying to use it only for bathing, cooking and so forth, washing dishes and so forth. They're still hesitant when using this water, and same with the tanks, the water tanks, for drinking water. And so that is, as we say, we're really not reinventing, but re-looking and rethinking the way that we look at disaster relief, I think, at this point in time, right? So, some of the questions that arise are, should we be looking at what kind of water filters can we purchase maybe here in the States that we can send over? Because you're looking more at a sustainable way of providing relief assistance, right? Because I said to someone, talking, at the same time, we're so grateful, this is why we're sending all the drinking water in bottles, but hopefully at the same time, someone is also mindful of the recycling and collecting it. Unfortunately, we don't recycle them in Tonga, but what usually happens is, someone can collect it. I know there are one or two agencies and private companies that collect items that can be shipped abroad, for recycling. So these are interesting things but that is why drinking water is so important.
Right. And that's hard. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because a lot of people are wondering, what, you're in the ocean, they get the water from the ocean, but it's all the ashes from the volcano that erupted that has kind of, I want to say, damaged the water supply there. So that's why a lot of people are donating water, because of the water supply has been damaged from the ashes. Is it also, how is the food supply there? Is that still ongoing, or is it coming from the ships, drop and go? Or do we still feed from the land there?
So whatever might be remaining of the crops, they've all also been damaged, because this ash, descended on the land, on the vegetation, on the crops and so forth, is damaged. So I believe, the usual root crops that we are used to, like the yam, the sweet potato, the cassava and so forth, this year's supply has all been ruined. So this is a big issue. I think the interesting point that I've heard that has been mentioned, and if you think about it, it makes sense. True to say, those who have lost their dwellings, those very vivid pictures of those from the island groups of you see a flattened island, they're sitting there on the sand. It's really touching. It's just really, And so they are the most immediately needing this relief. But at the same time, when you think about the water and the crop damage and the vegetation that's been damaged, that applies to everybody, regardless of whether you lost your dwelling. It's doubly or triply or quadruply so when you lost your dwellings. But same time, and that is, I think, some of the concerns we pray for the leaders and the people who are on the ground there doing the work, the disbursement, that they do try to reach everybody. So we have those who are now in temporary settlements, and they will need to be tended to immediately. But at the same time, everybody else is also suffering from the water loss. So I understand that they have been going through what we went through earliest in the pandemic, where the water distribution, how everyone rushed out and bought everything on the shelves. And then, Costco started to limit us. We could only have one case of water and one thing of, bathroom tissue and so forth. That is where Tonga is at this point. So, the water, there's another point I've heard raised in the different community drives. You have to take into account that for the containers, these freighting containers, they can only take X number of tons, or the weight. So water obviously is very heavy. So I remember we just closed off one of our first 40-foot container, one of our joint community initiatives, and we were told, only put in 7 pallets of water in order to counterbalance and have other items which are less heavy. So these are interesting pieces of the conversation which are good to share and talk about and be mindful about.
Right, because I went to San Francisco Enterprise, which is in Oakland, is the Langi family own the shipping, and they have tons and tons and tons of pallets of water. And they said in one of the containers, the weight is that. I was like, just load it up. Everyone thinks you just load the container and then it goes, and it's by weight. He said the maximum one of the containers can take is 45,000 pounds. And he says, and a pallet of water, depending how much is on it, is 2,000 pounds. So you're limited to how much can ship. So you're absolutely right. We don't think of that. We just think load the pallet up, stuff it as much as we can. But really, there's a weight limit. So we have to take that into consideration as to, 6 pallets at a time in one container. So, plus they have other things to ship to Tonga. I seen a family unloading furniture to send back to Tonga for their family to have a chair to sit in. They were unloading chairs, dining room chairs, for families in Tonga. So not just the water supply and food, but people were unloading furniture for their family to sit on, or a bed to sleep on. So you're absolutely right. We have to take into consideration the weight.
And I would just want to share from my own personal experience. Like I say, it's very interesting, these new elements to disaster relief and the way we can help our families have come to the fore. So, in very recent times, we now have Zelle and Venmo and GoFundMe pages, which were not present, some years ago. For myself, sending to my family was trying to find out whether MoneyGram or Western Union was working. And so in the absence of that, I found one Tongan-run company here in the Bay Area, whom you can pay the money, and they have a connection with a big department store in Tonga. That's not a department, so a big store. And so they have like 4 different packages. There's $100, $200, and so forth package, which has a combination of food items. And so you can choose. I Zelled the lady the money. I was a bit hesitant at first because I've never used them before, and it was amazing. She gave me a reference number in 5 minutes, and I texted to my family, and they were able to pick it up on Saturday, all in one day, and they were very pleased about that. And they said that the store even allowed them to swap items. They said, okay, we didn't want the flour because no one can make the Tongan pancakes in the house, so we swapped it up for some saimini, for some noodles. I thought, that is really great. And the other thing that I've done is because I know it takes time for our shipments to go from the US to out to Tonga. So another company, Tongan based in New Zealand, in Auckland, was offering that they could send water down. It only takes, I think, up to a week for the shipments to go down from New Zealand to Tonga. So I have a pallet of water that's on its way. And so I try not to think about it was daylight robbery, because I'm thinking, gosh, these trays of water are only $4 at Costco, right, Carl? And I'm doing the math. I won't tell you how much I paid for it, but it's true to say water is a precious commodity. I thought, I won't think about it. I'll just do it. At least I'll have some peace of mind that I've sent them some water. So the water will arrive there next week. Nice. For my family. So these are ways about thinking outside of the box. I've heard others do that. I think I was sharing with you on our program yesterday. People have even sent money to Australia for them to send goods down. In Fiji is even closer. I think the vessel arrives the same day. Can you believe that?
Fiji.
But the other thing is that they are putting in place in Tonga, if I hadn't shared or not, they quarantine the goods for 3 days.
Okay.
That has been part of the COVID restriction, and that's still very much in place. So it's not only drop and go, there's also a 3-day quarantining, and that actually also applies, with all due respect, to our deceased who have been conveyed back to Tonga. They want to be buried there. They also have to undergo that the 3-day quarantining, and they have not been permitted by the Ministry of Health to open the casket once it arrives back in Tonga and is released from the 3-day quarantining. So after that 3 days, they have to do some sermon of some sort, as they might wish, the family might wish, and then it has to be buried immediately.
Oh, wow.
So many things that people don't think about. You know what I mean? Like you think it's just get food or get water over there, but there's life. Life is going on. Like all the things that we normally go through, is going on in Tonga, and it's going on during a natural disaster, and it's going on during a pandemic. So all of those things just compound all of the efforts and just make them that much more important. I've always been amazed by the ingenuity of people. When people need help, they find a way to get help to people, and so it's a store being innovative and saying, "Look, just get us the money, and we'll give we can do it from here." It's finding a way to get water to the island, not through the normal shipping route. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things are so inspiring to see that if I got to get help to somebody, I'm going to get help. There's a in speaking of help, I believe there's an event going on at in Emeryville coming up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm really touched. I think you probably might know that at the Fairmont Hotel, the trademark Fairmont Hotel up in San Francisco City, they have a Tonga room, their restaurant there, and that's really touching to have their room. But I was very interested in that Trader Vic's in Emeryville reached out last week with an email, and the marketing manager was sharing with me that she has like a 4,000 member email distribution list, and so they decided that they'd like to do a fundraiser because of the volcano eruption. So it's interesting to say they have a beautiful piece of Tongan tapa cloth, which is displayed in their bar/restaurant, which I've never been to, but so hence their affiliation, sense of connection to Tonga, and they wanted to do something. And she said she's had a really overwhelming, oops, I used the word, outpouring, I'm sorry, the O word, of support for their event that they've initiated. And so I'll be going down, as you can see the tracker there, thank you. It's going to take place on Thursday, the 24th of February. And it's just amazing that different people from different walks of life have reached out. And it touches us as a human being, in this very, very busy and developed world that we live in. People still have and feel the sense of humanity with a fellow human being is on the planet with them, even though they might be on the other side of the world. I have an uncle here, and I was telling him, oh, people ask me, where is Tonga, by the way? And I'm trying to be, maybe it's my diplomatic angle. I'm trying to say, do you know where Fiji is and New Zealand? We're kind of halfway in between, and Samoa is here. And oftentimes, people will still look at me with a question mark on their face. They have no idea. So my uncle Tongan uncle who lives up in Minnesota, he says, Sela, you are giving the wrong explanation. This is what you need to tell them. This is what you tell fellow American people. You tell them, go to Hawaii and head south. They will then understand that is where Tonga. And so I've been saying that. And interestingly enough, Nikki and Carl, people totally get where Tonga is now. Would you agree with me?
I would agree. And when people ask me where Samoa is, I'm like, I try to explain, and then I finally gave in and said, you know where Hawaii is? And they go, yeah. And I go, it's 5 hours from there. It's 5 hours.
There we go.
Okay.
Sometimes it's how you explain who you are. Like they're like, what is Samoan? What is like, is that like what is that? And then so you go through the islands and you always end up in Hawaii. That's all you always end like, okay, so you don't know what Tongan is, you don't know what Fijian is, you don't know what Maori is. Hawaii. We'll start in Hawaii and kind of, but that's like the relative point, the relationship point where people can start there. And to your point, so there's your starting point, and then head south and you can run into a whole bunch of people in islands. Do you think this speaks to a bigger issue of global warming? Because we had done a show I think it was Torua was the name of the island, and I'm probably messing up the name of it, but it's actually for all intents and purposes, it's sinking, and they're losing their island because of rising water levels. Um, do you think that this is something that we can point to and say this is caused by global warming, or bigger effects that we're having on the planet?
In the lack of with the lack of scientific qualifications, but I do feel so, most certainly. And we can see that the way that my very simple understanding of the volcano eruption was the fact that some seawater, or a lot of seawater, based on the volume of the eruption, obviously managed to seep into the the center, the base of the volcano, where all the hot lava is, and I guess it's that reaction. And so these things take place, these natural phenomena which take place, and unfortunately the coastal areas of already low-lying countries such as Tonga and Tuvalu, Tokelau, and all of the Pacific Island countries who are extremely vulnerable to climate change. We are unfortunately more susceptible because of the changes that are occurring, which include, I'm sad to say, things that take place. I should only speak of my own country, really. Like we have the reefs, which are natural protection for, large sea masses, so to speak, like tsunami waves. But in addition to that, there are what we call mangroves, which protect the coastal line. And unfortunately, of course, in this day and age where we are developing the land and building more, we are unfortunately tearing away the natural environment of our beautiful island countries. And then on top of that, of course, we are all together not helping with all the emissions that we have, because we have more vehicles now that we are buying. Nobody wants to walk like back in the day. Our ancestors, they walk from that side of the island to the other side, and now we refuse to get our feet dirty, I'm ashamed to say. But we really should be going back to basics, because I think our longevity is derived from our more natural lifestyles of our ancestors, eating from the land and the seafood and so forth, and more exercise, natural exercise we take. But certainly, to answer your question, I would agree that this is all taking place, sadly, because of global warming and the depletion of the ozone layer and so forth. So this is an ongoing conversation between the leaders of all our countries, and I don't know how more we can focus and highlight these issues and the plight of our poor island countries.
Right.
It was interesting to see, and you had talked about it earlier, social media. We were seeing it in real time. Like, we were seeing things on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter before even mainstream news was reporting on it. We were seeing things happen, and seeing the disaster begin to happen. And I think that's helped, in my opinion. Again, like, kind of like you're saying with the science, with the global warming. I'm not a scientist, and so I'm not a behavioralist either, but I think those kind of things help when those images are there for people to see. So it's not somebody just reporting that there's something bad going on in Tonga. It's there for you to see. It's the videos are there for you to see, and the reactions of people. And I think that helps humanize what's going on, so people can, have a frame of reference about, the fear, or the what's going on there, versus reading it in print on a newspaper, or even waiting for the news. Seeing that happen on social media, I think helps the relief effort. Do you think that helped help get the word out about what was going on? Like, what do you see social media as having played any role in the relief efforts?
Usually when you have such a natural disaster, especially for a small island country such as Tonga, which less visibility, so to speak, and the global the global picture, the graphic images that already came through, I say seeped through because, we lost communications with Tonga. They laid the groundwork, for this drawing attention to what has happened, and also I think to highlight this issue about climate change. So, when you saw those peoples on Mango Island and Fanoi, when they were sitting there on the slightly more elevated grounds of their island, and it was barren because all their dwellings had been washed away by the tsunamis. It was a really graphic image, I think, on many different levels, and in particular, I think, for the climate change voice. And I think I have no idea. I mean, I think I'm allowed to ask you questions too. I mean, how do we take that message and keep talking? And we have been talking for so long.
I think
what should we do? I mean, you've had this important topic in your talk shows for a while. So what do you think about it?
I think we need to, like you said, continue the narrative. So if we're talking about it, not make it a kind of a soundbite, and we talk about it today, and then like the water filtration that you're talking about in Tonga, that should be, we shouldn't stop having that conversation just because we get things, water to places they need to be. The water filtration probably needs to be a long-term conversation. So the same thing with the other things that end up being kind of news bites, sound bites, headlines, and then they go away. And to your point, we stop talking about them. So I think that somehow we have to find legs for those conversations so that we don't get weary with it and turn around and deal with the next shiny thing that's important and interesting, but not leave it alone after it's time. It's like the filtration thing. I think we should be talking about that long term.
I also think that the pictures of the disaster, because it really, people feel, we always talk about how people feel towards, they seen the pictures of the kids on the island sitting, with no home, no house, everything is destroyed. That really, pictures of the kids sitting there waiting for a shipment to come in, really got to people's heartstrings. And I think if we continue to share these pictures of these kids and the pictures of the island and just keep throwing them out there, it'll continue to pull at people's hearts so that this won't go away. That we, like, after a couple of weeks, like the next disaster that happens, people move on. And we just, because we're of our community, we're going to continue to support Tonga. But for the whole world to just, we have to keep talking about it, and just keep sharing the pictures of the island and what happened to it because of all that's going on in the world. We just have to continue to keep talking about it. And I know we're going to keep talking till we're blue in the face, but for our community to continue to see these pictures, it will just keep them, interested in this. So, and that's what got me too, is just the pictures of the kids. I'm like, my kids have a roof over their head. They go to the water on the refrigerator to get water if they want to drink. What about our kids back in the islands? They can't just go to a refrigerator. The ashes and it has taken over their water supply. So I always think we have to continue to help and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And hopefully something will happen where this generation or the next generation will find a solution for all of us. So we just keep talking about it and pushing the pictures of disasters that are happening because of this. Oh, I'm such a crybaby. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. And there was another image that came through of the one lady who sadly passed away. There were 4 confirmed deaths to date, and our thoughts and our prayers are with the families of those who have lost their loved ones.
Yeah.
One lady who passed away on the island of Mango, they buried her there. So there was, another image of that, which is really touching. And so I had an interesting approach from someone 2 weeks ago, to see whether there may be any possibility to bring these peoples, these displaced persons, to the States under one of their visa schemes, which usually can be extended, I believe, for under humanitarian grounds. And I haven't really looked at it, but I understand that a lot of these displaced people, sorry, I say people, that's such a foreign one. A lot of displaced Tongans, my fellow countrymen and country people, do want to return to their islands, homes. So that is the way of life that they love and are used to. And in spite of the environmental challenges that they'll obviously face, going forward, they still want to return. And so that will be an interesting part of the conversation for the planners and the data receivers, collators going forward, is, to try and we are confident that they will do that, is to design a house rebuilding project that will be sustainable and appropriate for them going forward, which includes elements like moving their dwellings up to the higher grounds on the island, maybe having this kind of housing style on stilts, and so forth. And so, like I said, natural disaster relief obviously is evolving and unfolding over time. And these are the conversations, as you say, we continue to make. And I think it's interesting. I see my 6-year-old son, I'm a late bloomer. They're very keen in instilling at their school, how to separate garbage and so forth. And they really discourage taking of plastic water bottles to school and so forth. So that's another thing, if we all take the small little necessary steps that we can together, I think that certainly helps too, right?
Right. Yes, I agree. Just a little, if everybody did one thing, it would help push. So yeah, thank you.
That's really the power of the community, is the power of one, right? If we all give, if thousands of us give, we don't need to give that much, and then we're going to make an impact. So if everybody can pitch in, then it makes impact, and it's not reliant on 1 or 2 or 10 people to do things. If 1,000 people do it, less people can make an impact. So I just seeing the innovation and the effort and the caring, it's I think that my first thing was like, I want to make sure that I'm giving to the right organization, because you always hear these crazy stories about GoFundMe's that don't go the right place, or these relief efforts that don't go to the right place. And having people like yourself and Alisi out there, and with your credibility in the community, I'm confident when I donate to Anamatangi that it's going to go to that's the right place to go. Or if I'm bringing water or supplies down to SF Enterprises where Naki's trying to get a container filled, I know those are going to the right places. So I really appreciate the time, because it's the end of a Monday. It's a long day. We're always happy to share space with amazing people, but the amazing people got to be able to share their time with us. So thank you so much for joining us 2 days in a row. If you missed our FICA podcast with Sela yesterday, you can check that out on our Facebook page or our YouTube page. And I'm going to let Naki wrap it up for us. But thank you for watching KOVIKI Talk.
Yeah. Sela, is there anything that we missed that you would like to get out before we go?
I'd like to thank you both for, hosting this conversation. And it's obviously ongoing with really topical issues of interest for our peoples and our friends and family and partners in the community. So I'd just like to say thank you to all those who've really shown their love and support over the past few weeks. for the little island kingdom of Tonga. Just know that, your thoughts and your kindness really will go a long way into helping people in need at this time. Thank you, KOVIKI Talks, tonight, and hope to join you again sometime later on in the year. But all the best with what you do, because I'm going to leave you here tonight, but you'll be flying the flag again next Monday and going forward. And thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sela, for your time. We appreciate everything that, if you would like to donate, we have been posting tons and tons of fundraisers that are going on in the Bay Area. There's a fundraiser this Saturday put on by National Tongan Association's Bay Area. So get a hold of Mata Elefi now. There's tons. Like I said, we're posting flyers. We appreciate everyone who's donating to help our island at Tonga get back on their feet, which is going to happen with everyone's help. So we appreciate your time. Alisi, we're going to have you back on because she lost power. So we will catch her soon and have her back on. Thank you so much. Let's see. What is that, Sela? Do you want me to put that out there? 650-685-1001.
That's just the consulate telephone number. If anyone needs any information or needs some guidance, we're very happy, to give that to people. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and space. We're here every other Monday at 5 p.m. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. God bless you and take care.
Our voice is our liberation.
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 Ko kingoa ko sina aloi tāwhuna tui vai pēka ko hau me la paha mo tonga tapu maulele mai ki Amerikane mo family i he taha November tahiwa wau noa o ke taia ha state te mau hiki ki ai ne talu pe mabu mai he tahiwa noa o nofa i pe se atoni pēka o mari muli pe mo ki whanau toko tolu i mo puna e ua pe au ko au na te retire me he ngawe i he pon ngawe ako i he tau e wanima pe au retire i he o se tau e ua pe ko kaunga ta mai kena whakalere e polo kalama ke kau tau lekeleka e se atoni ngawe o toko nia ai si kau tau lekeleka ke o hi ke na fia na mo i he toinga na mo i e o kutau sa ia ke kuku pe o tau ma pe koe maha ki pe koe hawhenga mea o tau ma o tau sino o kai ki tau share pe koe u mea ia tene hanga o toi o mai ai whainga tā ia ki o tau mo ui tau te whito ki he lere koni ke maha ki koni ai pandemic ko COVID-19 o tau whe amo ia o mahu inga o pito ke tau whe ngoi mo whanongo ki he tūtu uni ko tuku mai ke awe tau tolu o huhu ko hia ke koe kawe pia koe whakatau ke loloa e tau mo wiki o te tau puke. My hope for Tongans that if you don't have love and happy inside you, I believe that you cannot share. You cannot live healthy. You cannot listen to each other. It's very important that we have that inside us. We have our culture, it's very important, and then we also have to listen to what's directed by the outside during COVID-19 for us to be able to live longer and stay healthy. Koe o mawinga pito koe tau nofo koe ni ke tau whiongongoi ka pauhika ke ia tau tore o wha mo whetongoni aki e whainga taa ke tau whanongo ki he utala tutu uni o mai ka tau tolu ke tau mo ifo loa hangi koe koe maha ki whakauha koe o tau whe amo ia maho inga pito te tau mui ia mo Awe ki tātou ke tau whanga e huhu ko ni o tuku mai uraki mai ua ko hea pe koe tau kawa i peke mo i lere.
Hiki hake ho monga hile o tala
Whakaha.
To o mai ae matapa ki a te au ke fufulu e kuhia i he vai ola ke maahine hina i ho ta ke umau ai pale kola to o mai ai